Welcome to another TechHub.Training video. In this video, we're going to be showing you how to solve the Tableau S&P 500 Analysis Challenge in Tableau, and we're going to show you how to build the visualization step by step. So just a reminder about this challenge, you want to be able to compare the stock performance of different companies within the S&P 500 over time indexed to each other to see how certain stocks are performing compared to other stocks. Okay, so let's show you how we're going to do this. We open up Tableau, and then you're going to want to connect your data. And for our data, we have a CSV file. To join a CSV file to connect it to your Tableau, you're going to want to go over here and hit to a file. You're going to want to go to text file. So select that. And as you select it, you'll see that you're able to click on it and connect it. Our table, or let's see, our CSV will just automatically come in over here, but if it doesn't automatically populate, you just grab it right here, click down and drag over here to bring your data in. So once you've done that, you can go down to sheet 1 and you can start building the visualization. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a calculated field. And what this calculated field is going to do is it's going to index the growth of each of the individual stocks within our data set. And so the reason that we're doing this is so that we can compare apples to apples. If you have a company where it has a lot more stock that it's issued out than another company, it's kind of hard to tell how one is comparing to the other because the values can just be so different. And so when you index it, you bring them both down to 0, and then you're just looking at percentage growth. And by doing that, you're able to just more clearly see how one stock is performing compared to a different stock. So let's create that calculated field. What you're going to do is come over here, and you can right click in this white space right here, and you'll see this box pop up. You click on create calculated field, and let's just name this indexed close. The close is the stock price at the time that the market's closed. And so we're just going to compare off of that. So the way that you're going to write this is you start off with average, and I'll just walk you through how to write it, and then I'll kind of explain each of the different components as well. So you're taking the average of the close, and that's the closing price, and then you're going to subtract the lookup, average, close, and then you're going to specify first here. So what is this? This is this is applying to each different row. So you're taking the average of that row, which is really just itself, because the average of one number and no other numbers is itself. The reason that we're doing average here is because this is required for this calculation to be valid. And so really, this doesn't actually change the formula. It just makes it so that Tableau will accept this calculation as valid. So you can kind of ignore this and just know that you need to have it for this. Same for this as well, as average. And what this lookup function is doing is it is looking up a specific close, not on that current row. This calculation is being applied to each row specifically in our data set. So this one is, instead of applying to the current row, it's saying apply this to a different row. Which row are we applying it to? The first row, which is the initial close price. And so we're taking our close price on the current date, and we're subtracting out the close price on the first date in our data set. And then what we're going to do is divide this by the close price on the very first date in our data set. And by doing this, we're indexing our stock price to whatever it was on the first day in our data set. And that shows how it's either grown or declined throughout the period that we're looking at. So it looks like my calculation contains an error. Let's see if I can figure out why I'm getting an error here. Oh, there we go, because I didn't close that off. Okay, so I have it written out. It looks like the calculation is valid. So let's hit apply. Hit OK. Okay, now we have our index close. And so as I drag this in, you'll notice that whatever it starts on will always start at 0%, and that is intentional. So let's build out our visualization here. what we're going to do is let's start out with the date. We're going to move the date to the column row because we want the date going from left to right. And then in our rows, let's drop in our index close. And here you can see it's already recognized that we have a date and that we have these values, and it's created a line chart for us. This is looking at every single row, and so it's essentially looking at how the market performs and aggregating it with every single company. And so that's not what we want. We want to be able to compare the growth or performance of different companies against each other. So to do that, we're going to actually have to specify a filter, or we're actually going to, we're going to drop name. We're going to grab name here to specify we want it separated by names, and we're going to drop it in here. So as we do that, you can see it kind of creates this spaghetti bowl of lines, and there's just way too much data here to make any practical use of it. So we're going to need to filter this down so that we can just compare a couple at a time to each other. So by doing that, we're going to create our filter, and we drop that name into filters. And as we do so, you can see everything is selected, and we don't want that because that's about 500 different companies that we're comparing. So let's click none here to deselect them all. And then let's just click on a couple here to start off with. So let's compare Apple to Amazon to start, because that's what I had in my solution. There's Amazon right there. Okay. And these are the ticker symbols that we're selecting here. Okay, so we hit apply, we hit OK, and now you can see it's only comparing these two lines to each other, so it's a lot easier to compare. So we actually, right now we're just looking at years and how it grows over years, and we want to actually stretch it out a little bit more because our data runs from 2013 to 2018, and so we want to actually look at how it grows month to month. So let's go up here to our columns to year. We clicked on this down arrow on the right side of it, and down here we're actually going to select month. And as we do that, instead of aggregating it to years, it's going to disaggregate it, and we're going to be able to compare across different months. So you can see here we got March, April, May, June, all of that going on. And so now you can see kind of how they've performed. Now it's impossible to tell unless you hover over it which line is which company, and we want to be able to tell which company is which with our trend lines. So what we're going to do to achieve that is go over here to name. We're going to hold down the control button and drag this onto color. And as we do that, it'll change it so that different lines are different colors. Now, with this legend over here, we can see that orange is Amazon and blue is Apple. And it looks like in this visualization, if you had bought Amazon at the start of 2013, February 2013, and held it all the way until 2018, you would have gotten better returns on your Amazon stock than you would have if you would have bought Apple. Okay, another thing that would be very nice is to be able to have an easily accessible way to change which companies that we're comparing to each other. So how we're going to do that is we're going to go over to filters. We're going to click on name here on this down arrow, and we're actually going to select show filter. As we do that, now you have a list over here that you can click on. We're not ever going to really want to select all, because if you select all, then you see it creates your spaghetti bowl. That's pretty useless. And so we're actually going to get rid of this all here. You click on down, this down arrow in the corner, you go over to customize, and then you can click this to deselect the show all value. As you click on that, all disappears. And so now you can just click on which companies you want to compare to each other. So we've done that. Let's click on Apple again, and let's also click on Amazon and get that back. Okay, great. And then in my solution, I just grabbed this by going up here and dragging it over here. That's just personal preference. I like it better because, let's see, if we move this as well, then it kind of just expands out this graph, and it just feels a little bit more organized. So that, again, that's personal preference. Okay, another thing that we might want to be able to do with this visualization is, instead of looking every time from 2013 to 2018, we might want to be able to look at a different date range and focus in on that. So we can do that by grabbing date over here and putting it into filters, and then specifying that we want to filter on a range of dates. So if we click on range of dates and then hit next, you can see it's selected a range of dates here. We'll just select this for now, hit apply and OK. And now we can actually show this filter and be able to dynamically choose which dates we want to look at by clicking on Show Filter again. So we're showing the filter. Let's drag it back over here. And now you can see you have this handy slider bar so you can specify if you wanted to look between 2015 and 2016, you could do something like this. And now you're just looking at the specific period right here and how it performed, how these different stocks performed during that period. Okay, so let's drag this back out. And we're getting pretty close to being finished. There's a couple other things that we can do to make this look really nice. One thing that we can do is make a dynamic title at the very top. So here we have stock gross and start date. Let's change that. And oh, it looks like I had something here before when I was messing around. So let's just get rid of that. And what we're going to want to do is show dynamically the name of the different stocks that we're comparing to each other. You can do that by going up to this insert here. And you can see it's got these different dynamic things that you can input. So for us, we're going to come down to the very bottom where it says name, and we're going to click on name. And you see it's got it inside of these brackets. And that will change dynamically as we filter to different names of stocks that we're looking at. So, okay, we have name. Let's just hit space and type in stock growth since start date, with the start date being the start date of this range that we're applying here. Hit apply, and you can see it changed it. And so now it shows specifically Apple and Amazon. If we selected another company, it would also include that in there as well. So it's kind of a handy way to do that. There's a couple other things that we can do to make our chart look a little bit better, be a little bit more user-friendly. And one of those things is actually adding the name of, or the company ticker sign onto the graph so that you don't have to look at the line, look at the color and say, okay, let's go over to the legend and see which one that is. So we can kind of keep our eyes in the same place by adding on the names onto the actual chart. The way that we do that is by going back over to name, holding down Control, dragging it over to label. And when we hold down Control, it essentially lets us do different things with the same value. So we have name on color, and so we also wanted to include it on label. So that's why we did Control, so that we could essentially duplicate it. Okay, so now you can see we have the company ticker symbol right next to the line here, so it's easier to identify which companies are which without having to come over and look at the legend. And we could actually hide this card now if we want because it's not as necessary. So I'm going to hit Control-Z and just bring that back though. Oh, that actually didn't do it, but let me just drag name back over onto label, so that's back. Okay. And then you can do some different stuff. You can format this. One way that you can format it is alignment. So if you didn't want it to be automatic here on where it's positioned, you could move this over to the left, to the right, bring it down closer to the bottom. There's different ways to do it. So, okay, another thing that might make this graph a little bit more intuitive to look at is changing this y-axis, these ticker symbols, because right now currently it's not super clear that we're working with percentages. We want to make it very clear that we're working in percentages, percentage growth. So by changing it, that'll make it more intuitive. We can do that by right-clicking in this area. So I right-clicked right there, and we go down to Format. And when we click Format, it changes this pane over here to Formatting. So let's go over to Scale, Numbers. We click on this, and instead of it automatically selecting how it's going to display it, we can choose. So let's change it so that it's displaying a percentage so that we can see specifically that it's percentage growth. And we don't necessarily need the 2 extra decimal places because it's always going to be 0, 0. And so we can just get rid of that to clean it up a little bit. Okay, so now it's become very clear that this is percentage growth that we're looking at. And we're comparing these two stock here. You can see it shows between the different months, and then it's got the values if you hover over it. Let's try adding in a different company, see what that does. Okay. And so yeah, this is a great way to be able to learn Tableau, get a little bit more comfortable with it, make visualizations that are dynamic. Another interesting thing to note here is that this date slider, if you change the start date to a later time, it's always going to start at 0. And that's because this calculated field here is working with the data set that we're giving it. And that means the filter data set. And so it's when that first part of it is working. So let's go into here, hit edit, so you can just see this formula. So this first function right here, the first value it's grabbing is the first value that we're specifying with our filter, not the first value in the entire data set, always at 2013. And so that's why it's always going to start at 0 here. And that's how we want it to be. So, okay. Hopefully this was a good tutorial for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reply on this challenge. And also feel free to leverage AI. AI is getting better and better every day at helping to build visualizations. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Thanks.